Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, what is up? What is good? What's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are enjoying your day. Finally, the NBA regular season has come to an end. Playoffs are just around the corner. However, we have to get through this quick play-in tournament to determine the 7 and 8 seeds for both the Eastern and Western Conference. In terms of the top 6 seeds for both conferences, they have already been official. We know what those 6 seeds are going to be. For the Eastern Conference, we have the Miami Heat at the number 1 seeded spot, the best record in the Eastern Conference. They will have home court advantage throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs, assuming they get that far. Next up at the number 2 spot is the Boston Celtics, followed up by the Milwaukee Bucks, who chose to kind of take that 3 spot because they low-key looked like they were trying to duck the Nets, but I ain't gonna say anything about that. Afterwards, we have the Philadelphia 76ers at that 4th seed, followed up by the Toronto Raptors as the number 5 seed, and to finish it off, we have the Chicago Bulls at that 6th spot. Moving over to the Western Conference, we have the number 1 seeded Phoenix Suns, who not only had the best record in their conference, but the best record overall in the NBA. In fact, the only team to break 60 wins in this season. Number 2 will be the Memphis Grizzlies, who's had an amazing season and look to be a legit title contender heading into the playoffs. Afterwards, you have the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are still there. They're still back. Klay Thompson's looking nice, and we'll see how these guys play. We know they have championship experience, so they're ready for the playoffs. We'll see how that goes. Taking up the 4th spot would be the Dallas Mavericks, who made a hell of a run in the second half of the season. After All-Star break, Luka was going off and doing his thing, and he helped lead this team to the number 4 seed. Afterwards, we have the Utah Jazz as the number 5 spot in the Western Conference. And to finish it off at that number 6 spot, we have the Denver Nuggets. Now, the 3-6 and the 4-5 matchups have already been made for both conferences. However, we still got to see what the number 1 and the number 2 spots in both conferences are going to face off against. And that will be determined by whatever happens in the play-in tournament. So, in terms of the play-in tournament, fighting for that 7th spot, we have the 7-8 matchup in the Eastern Conference between the Nets and the Cavs. Winner of that matchup will take the 7th spot. The loser will drop into the 9th, 10th fight to get that second 8th seed, that 2nd spot. It's always weird when it comes to the play-in tournament. Basically, 7-8 fight. The winner of that 7-8 takes the 7th spot. The loser has another opportunity to try and take the 8th seed from the winner of the 9-10 matchup. So we've got Brooklyn and Cleveland in that 7-8 matchup, and we've got Atlanta and Charlotte in that 7-8 matchup for the Eastern Conference. Looking at the Western Conference, you've got the Timberwolves and the Clippers in that 7-8 spot. Winner takes that 7th spot. Loser will fall into the fight for the 8th spot. And then you have the Pelicans and the Spurs in the 9-10 spot, fighting to see if they can get into the second round to try and take that 8th seed. So it should be interesting. I don't know how the play-in tournament's going to work. And in fact, might as well. Let's make some predictions. There's not much to talk about in terms of the regular season. We already know it's been interesting. A couple awards going to go here and there. 6th man of the year is probably going to go to my main man, Tyler Hero. We already know Embiid won the scoring title, so that's awesome. But the MVP race is really the only conversation you're really going to have. And it really comes down to 3 people. Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis. It's probably going to be Jokic. Giannis had a great season, but again, I felt unless he got the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, he was not going to win MVP. And Embiid's been having a fantastic season. But with the way Jokic has played, yes, he's the 6th seed in the Western Conference, but if you look at the Nuggets record and you look at the Sixers record and you see what both have had to work with, Jokic is most likely going to come out as the MVP. But I wouldn't be mad if Embiid takes it. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. The award ceremony will be coming up at some point later on down the road. But let's get into the play-in tournament. How is that going to turn out? Well, let's take a look at the Eastern Conference first, because I feel like the 7-8 matchup is the most crucial and most interesting matchup out of all of them. You take a look at the 7-8 matchup, we've got Brooklyn taking on Cleveland. This will be in Brooklyn because they had the 7th spot, so 1 game for KD and Kyrie to take that 7th spot. Do they get it done? I believe they will. I really believe the Nets are going to be able to take down the Cavs. Now again, when these 2 teams met up a couple days ago to try and fight to see who's going to get that spot, the Nets had to pull off a comeback to beat the Cavs. The Cavs are a really talented team. They're young, but they're talented and they're skilled. And they're going to take the fight to KD and Kyrie, and they're going to need everyone else to show up. The Nets don't really play a lot of defense, and that's what makes this kind of scary, because KD and Kyrie can show up, but if you guys don't stop Garland and you don't stop these young guys from doing what they're going to do, they're just going to keep scoring, and that could make the game really dangerous. You've watched the Nets over these last games. They've been doing nothing but fighting in close games and having to pull all these comebacks because they just can't play defense. Now, they could get Ben Simmons back. However, it won't be for the play-in tournament. It will have to be some time in the playoffs. Maybe as early as the first round matchup. Who knows? But in terms of that matchup between the Nets and the Cavs, I'm going to take the Nets. I just believe KD and Kyrie are not going to take that risk of having to play a second game and potentially be eliminated. That would be terrible for them. They don't want to play for that 8 seed because that becomes very dangerous in a do or die game. Nah, KD and Kyrie don't want to take that risk. They're going to do everything in their power to win that first matchup. So I'm going to take the Brooklyn Nets. They'll take that 7th spot, and they will face off against the Boston Celtics in the first round. So Brooklyn will move to the 7th spot. Cleveland will fight to see if they can get into that 8th spot. In terms of the 9-10 matchup, this is where it gets tough, man. I really love what I'm seeing from Charlotte. LaMelo Ball's been amazing. Terry Rozier continues to be great. I love what I'm seeing from these guys. They're a young team. They're very talented, very skilled. But Atlanta has the experience. And Trae Young is a bona fide star, man. He's proven in this league. Helped this team get to the Eastern Conference last year. Yeah, they didn't play the way they needed to play, and it's been tough. But hell, if they can get to the playoffs, they may shock somebody else again. Who knows? They'll probably shock everybody if they can get back to the conference finals again. But who knows if that'll be the case. Between these two in a do-or-die situation is very tough, but I'm going to pick the guy that's got experience, Trae Young. He's a bona fide star. He's a proven star, and he helped lead this team to the Eastern Conference Finals. I just cannot go against what Trae Young and the Hawks have been doing as of recently. I love Charlotte. I think they're a great young team. They're developing. They're building the right thing there, but Atlanta, I feel in these type of situations, they thrive, and Trae Young thrives in these type of situations. So I'm going to take the Hawks to take down the Hornets, and it's going to be the Hawks versus the Cavs in a matchup to see who gets that final play-in spot. And if I'm going to pick between those two, it's very tough. But again, I'm going to roll with the Hawks, which is very tough because out of all the combatants, minus the Nets, when I look at the Cavs, the Hornets, and the Hawks, of those three teams, the team I want to see the least, if I'm the Miami Heat, is the Atlanta Hawks, because they're the ones with experience. So you already know that'll be a tougher matchup. But I think it's going to be the Hawks in the first round. I think, unless Atlanta just doesn't show up, I think it's going to be the Hawks in the first round. They're going to win those 2 playing games. They're going to beat Charlotte, and they're going to beat Cleveland, and they're going to take that 8th spot. So I believe at the end of the day, the 7th spot will go to the Nets. They will take on the Celtics. The 8th spot will go to the Hawks, and they will take on the Heat. Moving on towards the Western Conference, looking at that 7-8 spot, we got the Timberwolves versus the Clippers. This is a very tough one. I think the Clippers are such a tough out. Honestly, looking at what they have assembled and the talent they have, if they had Kawhi right now, they'd be the most dangerous team in the West. The most dangerous team minus the Phoenix Suns, and you can make an argument minus the Grizzlies, but I think the Clippers would be such a dangerous team. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but they would be such a tough out. They would be a tough out for Phoenix. They'd be a tough out for Memphis. They'd be a tough out for Golden State. If they had Kawhi, some people may be bold enough to say that they'd be good enough to get out of the Western Conference. And there's an argument to be made there, because this Clippers team assembled is more talented than what they were last year. And if they only had Kawhi, it's a difference maker. However, they won't have Kawhi for this play-in tournament. However, why did I say however twice? I don't know. They won't have Kawhi for this play-in tournament, but they will have Paul George there as well. So, yeah, I think this is a tough one because Cat's been doing fantastic. Cat's playing at another level. You know Anthony Edwards. We know what he's doing. He's playing at a high level as well. These guys have just been playing so well for Minnesota. But the same could be said for the Clippers. Honestly, I'm going to take the Clippers to win this matchup here in the 7-8 matchup. The Clippers are going to take the 7th spot, and they're going to have a tough, gritty fight with the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round. Moving on to the 9-10 spot between the Pelicans and the Spurs. Man. I don't know which one to pick, because the Pelicans, they've had talent. They've been, kind of teetering here and there. They've got talent. And, you got CJ McCollum there, and you know what he's going to be able to do. So, oh boy. Do I take the Pelicans? Because the Spurs, even though they don't have the talent, you can make the argument they don't have the talent that the Pelicans have. The Spurs have been just fighting and fighting. The minute they saw the Lakers lacking and falling apart, they just kept fighting and fighting and winning games. And they won a huge game to get themselves into the play-in tournament. I think it was against Denver. So the Spurs have been riding on some great momentum and found themselves in the play-in tournament. If I'm going to pick one, I trust Popovich and his coaching, and I trust what the Spurs have been always able to do. So I think in a close game like this, an elimination game, do or die, I'm going to take the Spurs. I think the Spurs are going to beat the Pelicans. They're going to move up to try and fight against the Timberwolves for that final spot. And I feel like that'll be the end for the Spurs there. Not even going to waste time. I think the Timberwolves are going to take down the Spurs, and the Timberwolves are going to take that final spot in the playoffs. So I think the 7th seed in the West is going to go to the Clippers. The 8th seed in the West is going to go to the Timberwolves, and the Timberwolves will have to take on the Suns in the first round. So that's pretty much my predictions for the play-in tournament. It's going to be great. It's going to be gritty. Honestly, we'll see what happens. Me, as a Miami Heat fan, I'm fine with either one of these guys. I don't care if we got to take Brooklyn on in the first round. I believe Miami can beat Brooklyn in the 7-game series. I'm not afraid of them. I believe in that. But I just think Brooklyn's not going to take that type of risk to potentially miss the playoffs in a do-or-die elimination game like that. They don't want to be like, well, we can fall back on the 8th seed. No. They don't want to potentially have to take on Atlanta, because Atlanta gives them fits. They don't want to take on Cleveland. So I think Brooklyn is going to get this win against Cleveland and move up to the 7th spot. And other 3 teams, the team I would want to see the least out of the 3 remaining teams here would be Atlanta. If we get Charlotte or Cleveland, I would not worry. But Atlanta, it's a bit of a worry there, because those guys also have postseason experience. And when you got 2 experienced teams that got talent and have a star, it can be difficult. But at the same time, I still trust in my Miami Heat. I believe we'll beat the Hawks in the 7-game series. I'm not worried about anybody in the first round. It's those later rounds, especially the 2 teams right now I'm worried about in the Eastern Conference is the Celtics and the Bucks. Simple as that. Sixers, I have to see what Harden does, because Harden could be the whole key to either getting them to the finals or completely collapsing this, because Harden has not been showing up to end the season. He's been streaky, so we'll see how that functions in the playoffs. And that first round matchup against Toronto is going to be difficult too. And I don't think Thibault can play, because they're going to be playing. Yeah, I don't think he can play when they're in Toronto, so I don't know how that's going to work out. Yeah, this is going to be a tough first round for the Sixers, but we'll see how it works out. Anyway, those are pretty much my predictions for the play-in tournament. Those will be the overall matchups, and once the play-in tournament's over, we can finally actually get into the playoff predictions. We'll do a whole bracket with that as well. But with that being said, that is all I've got, and I'm out of here, man. Peace.